Hello, my name is Sophia Zabo, and you're watching Knights of the Roundtable. Vaping has been a fad spread throughout teams in America, including here in EWG. A large majority of our school has admitted to owning a vape, and an even larger majority has admitted to at least trying one once. Today we will be discussing the negative and positive effects of vaping. I'm going to let my panelists introduce themselves.
I'm Nick Petrarca. I'm a student here at EWG.
I'm Nick Dubois. I graduated last year and I work at Juice Man's Vape Shop in Kingston, URI.
Bob Quindazzi, I'm a history teacher here at the high school.
Jeremy Taylor, I'm the technology director for the district.
Okay, so I'm going to start off by asking, when did you first hear about vaping and what did you think of it? I'll go to you.
Oh, I would say that probably it was about 10 years ago that I first heard about electronic cigarettes, and my initial impression was that it's a fabulous way for people to stop smoking.
Mm-hmm.
But then, obviously things have changed quite a bit since then.
How have things changed?
Well, it's gone beyond a remedy of, a way to get people to stop smoking, and now it's become an end in and of itself, and they are marketing this highly addictive substance to underage people. It's just solely with the goal of making as much money as possible.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Nick, what do you think about that?
I think that he's not necessarily wrong. I think it's kind of been taken advantage of, but at the same time, vaping itself is the best alternative to quitting smoking, like smoking cigarettes. I have parents and adults come in all the time to the shop and ask me what's so good about it, and I have to explain it to them and everything. But the first time I actually ever heard about vaping was my freshman year. And my friend had one on the bus one time and kept asking me to try, and I thought it was so dumb, but I tried it and I started coughing and I hated it. That was my first experience with it.
So when was the transition into hating it to liking it?
I had a different friend who bought his own, and my sophomore year we would use it in my car and stuff, and I was like 16 at the time. And we thought it was so fun until he gave it to me as a gift, and I bought my own, and I've been into it ever since.
Mm-hmm. So what do you like so much about vaping, and what has kept you into it for so long? It's
honestly the most satisfying thing. I think just people like to do their own tricks and stuff. I don't know if anyone's ever seen any on YouTube and stuff, but people are obsessed with it, just blowing out the clouds and everything. Biggest clouds, best tricks, just fun to do.
All right, what do you think about that?
I have a problem with that. So I'm an advocate of vaping as an alternative to smoking cigarettes. I think anybody who smokes cigarettes should absolutely stop right now and switch to vaping, or quit altogether. But I do not think that they should be marketing it to children. I think there needs to be a huge culture shift there. It's the same way that cigarettes were back in the 60s. They were marketing them to children, and then they did something about it. And now we realize what a problem cigarettes really are. Kids are going to be dumb, they're going to try stuff, but I don't think we should be encouraging that. Because once you're addicted to nicotine, it's very difficult to quit. It's one of the most addictive substances known to man.
What would be the appropriate age to start, would you say?
To be honest, I don't think you should be able to get into vaping unless you have a doctor write you a prescription for it. I mean, if you're not already smoking, you shouldn't be smoking, you shouldn't be vaping. Yes, it might be fun. Maybe they could market it without the nicotine, but once you have that addiction, it's very difficult to quit.
Okay, so what you're saying is people shouldn't vape unless they have a serious addiction to smoking, and it's a healthier alternative, and a doctor should definitely prescribe it for them.
Exactly.
Okay, Nick, what do you think about that?
Well, I personally can see both sides of the argument. My big thing with vaping is not all the information has been released yet. There hasn't been enough medical stuff on it yet, and on the flip side, the vape shop there hasn't been enough marketing information. It's so new. It's such a new trend that there's nothing on it. And while there is a few sources every here and there, it's tough to say with a fact whether or not it's good or bad. I do believe underage vaping it's not good. Underage anything, I mean, they have that age limit for a reason, and I am a strong believer in, that they should be kept to that standard.
Okay, so Nick, you were obviously underage when you started vaping. Do you think that's okay? What do you think is the appropriate age to start?
Back to what he said, I don't think it's ever really a good time to start. I mean, unless it was prescribed. But one thing you mentioned was the no nicotine alternatives. And for e-juice and e-liquids that are for vaping, there are the no nicotine options. I know my shop has them. Every shop I've ever been to actually has them. So if you want to do it just for the pure joy of doing it without getting addicted to anything, like that's the way to go. But I don't think there's ever really a good time to start doing it. It's just something that people start because it's a trend and carry on with it.
Could I ask you a question about that, since you work in a vape shop? What percentage of the sales would you say are with nicotine versus without nicotine?
96% nicotine.
Okay. So, I mean, I think that clearly what we have here is, you know, the companies that make these things, they are interested in making money. That's just how corporations are. And they will, by hook or by crook, whatever they'll do. You know, as Jeremy said, they marketed cigarettes to children for decades. And the thing about it is, right, you get once you're addicted, well, you're addicted. So it's super hard to quit. So I feel like that the vaping industry as a whole, you know, the corporations, the lobbyists have been super disingenuous of this. They continue to, oh no, it's just to help people quit smoking. But if you look at the trend of smoking in the United States, it's, you know, it used to be 50% of the people smoked in the United States back in the 50s, and now it's down to 20%. And almost all of that reduction came after the restrictions on advertising and well before vaping. So while I agree, like, it would be awesome if people used e-cigarettes instead of smoking because they already smoked, this idea that it's okay to just sell it to anybody, and not even underage, because obviously, you know, if you sell it to people that are 18, then kids will get it, just like alcohol and other stuff like that.
If I may interject, one of the things I noticed about the vaping argument is, well, it's just water vapor, it can't hurt you. I believe, like, anything you put into your lungs, as someone who has struggled with lung issues, in 8th grade my lung collapsed, I almost died, it was intense. That was just due to, like, me growing too fast, my body couldn't keep up with it. But anything you put into your lungs, I can't imagine being healthy for you. And people think, well, water vapor is natural, it's water. Well, you drink water, that's natural.
It's not water vapor. So if you look at I'm sure you know this, if you look at the contents of the vape juice, it's 2 different types of oil.
It's propylene glycol and vegetable glycerin, if I'm correct.
Those are both different types of oil. When you use one, they add as an antifreeze in water, and the other is used as an ingredient in food, which is it's safe, you know, you eat it. That doesn't mean it's good for you to eat it. It means that it's in our food as a preservative or whatever, but just because they use it as a food product does not mean that you should be breathing it in. And I don't recommend vaping to anybody except as an alternative to smoking cigarettes, but people are going to do it, and I do think that a lot of the problem would go away if you needed a prescription to get nicotine added to it. Because that's why they're marketing it the way they are, because they know that once you're hooked, you'll keep buying that juice and keep buying those pens for years to come. But without the nicotine piece, there's not that same draw. You're only doing it because you enjoy it, and maybe you do, maybe you don't, but you're not addicted to it. And that's a different discussion altogether.
That's a very good point. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Knights of the Round Table. Now we pretend to talk.
I think,
Why don't you have your Chromebook?
I'm sorry, I forgot it at home.
Why? Okay, alright. That's really gonna help you out, alright? It's really gonna help you out.
I'm sorry.
That's sorry, I put it up. Sorry, it's gonna break your Chromebook.
It won't happen again.
It better not.
3, 2, 1. Hi, we're back at Knights at the Round Table, where we are discussing the topic of vaping. So as we get back from break, I'm going to bring up the topic of popcorn lungs. Nick, do you know anything about that?
It is something I heard about, and at the time I was still getting into vaping itself, so I remember looking it up and finding out from what I read that it was a myth. I know that our generation right now is kind of being used as testing monkeys. We don't really know what's going to happen in the future, kind of like when people got into smoking cigarettes in the 60s, they had no idea what was going to happen. What I do know is that the most likely thing to happen is years from now, if you do it for a long time, you're more prone to your lungs getting bronchitis, which you could get that ordinarily. So it was just a chance I was willing to take after I read that.
I respect that opinion, I do. One of the things you said that I agree with 100% is like it's, at the time they said cigarettes, it's good for you and all that. Like, I feel like we don't know that much about popcorn lung right now, but like we don't know if it's a myth or not. But even on the off chance that it might be true, like on that 1% it might be true, that's not a risk I would be willing to take. I will go on record as someone that does not vape. I do not vape. I see both sides though. I can see both the pros and the cons. But as I said, like even the fact that it's being discussed, the fact that there is a concern that there might be a thing called popcorn lung, I mean, not a risk that I feel like a lot of people should be willing to undergo.
So it all goes back to my argument that as an alternative to the lung cancer we know that cigarettes cause, I think popcorn lung is an acceptable risk for me. I used vaping to quit smoking about 3 years ago. I haven't had a cigarette since. I used to smoke 3 packs a day. So it's really helped me. And my doctor was very happy when I told him I switched to vaping. He said it's a much safer alternative. It's not safe, but it's much safer than cigarettes because we know cigarettes will cause all kinds of diseases when you smoke them for a long period of time. But again, if I had to do it again, I wouldn't have picked up that first cigarette when I was 17.
So you said that vaping is not safe, which is true.
Well, I don't have proof to say that it is safe, so I don't think we should say anything's safe unless we have evidence to say that it is safe.
I respect that.
I agree.
Mr.
So-
Condazi, do you think it's safe or not safe?
Well, I couldn't make a judgment about that, a really reasoned judgment, other than to say that putting stuff in your lungs doesn't strike me as a particularly healthful thing to do. But I will just say this, that, we knew that cigarettes, there was medical documentation that cigarettes were harmful to your health way back in the early 1900s, very early 1900s. But with the 20s, with the boom of advertising, they managed, the cigarette companies managed to convince people that it was safe, even though there was always evidence, and they would constantly cast doubt upon the scientific findings. Oh no, that was wrong. We have our own scientists. And I see exactly the same thing happening in the vaping industry. May turn out to be safe. I don't know. But certainly there's a big enough population of former smokers that we could use as the guinea pigs. My objection to this, of course, is as a teacher that I do not want my students, the children that I am in charge of caring for, to be exposed to this kind of risk and also expense too. I'm just curious, could you clue me in here a little bit, like how much does it cost to vape a week, like if you were just like a regular user?
Just for like buying the stuff to put in the
Yeah,
vape?
just the ongoing expense. I don't know how long.
From all the shops I've been to for per weekly, you're talking like $20 a week. But
Okay.
that's if you go through that amount of juice that quickly.
I mean,
Because
obviously
everyone
it'll
goes
vary.
at different rates, yeah.
Right.
But for me, it was like $20 every 2 weeks. But
Okay, so that's not an inconsiderable expense if you add that over the course of your lifetime as well. And given that things that are addictive, that really literally means you have to do them, that you can find yourself in situations where that could be a problem, where it's not available. I don't know, I find it very limiting, aside from whatever health risks there might be.
To kind of piggyback off that, the fact that some vape companies are owned by nicotine companies, they're owned by the same companies that make cigarettes. I mean, you're right. It's all a money thing. It's all corporate. They're all trying to make money. But the fact that it's, as I said, owned by a lot of them are owned by the same company, which is red
I
flag.
get what you're saying, but at the same time, Kraft owns Philip Morris. I mean,
Yeah.
it's all about money. If there's a place where there's a market where we can easily make money, they're going to go into it. It's all about the money. It has nothing to do with whether a product's safe, whether it's good. If there's a way for them to make money, they're going to do it. And if they find a way to make more money, they're going to do that. And I think that's what pushing the nicotine and marketing it to kids is doing. They're like, oh, we can get away with it again, for a while anyway. Let's do this.
So we've heard a lot of negative things about vaping. Nick, do you know any positive things about vaping besides it's more healthier than cigarettes?
yeah, well, like they said earlier, it's like anything you inhale, you don't know if it's good or not, and it's really hard to list off benefits because we don't know if it's actually going to affect us in the future. But that's honestly one of the, besides like satisfaction, what I said earlier is if you're a smoker, it's the best way, in my opinion, to quit smoking rather than nicotine patches and all those other things. Because besides wanting to quit, they also would still want the satisfaction of like just blowing out something, knowing they're actually doing something. It'll distract them. So that's the main benefit and the only thing that I know for sure.
Okay. All right. So our school has obviously caught a lot of people vaping in school, and we've had a couple assemblies about vaping and posters come up. What else do you think our school should do about this vaping problem we have? Yes.
It's a tricky subject, I think. Obviously, people are going to do it no matter what. You can't. Any rule you apply is going to get broken. It's the rule of thumb. It sucks. I think we need to have more so the education of the harmful effects of vaping and make them make their own choice. You know, here's what could happen. You do what you want. I don't think like detention is going to be, you know, 'cause, I mean, a lot of people that get detention, they don't care.
I can vouch for that.
Do you mind if I jump in there?
Oh, of course.
So when I was in school here, long time ago, we didn't have a problem with vaping because vaping wasn't around yet, but we had a problem with smoking. And the kids who smoked realized that if I do this in school, I'm going to get in a lot of trouble, so they generally didn't. And the ones who were going to smoke outside of school did. I mean, and there wasn't a lot the school could do about it besides educating kids as to what a bad choice that is to start in the first place and encouraging them to quit. And I think this is the same thing over again. I mean, all you can really do is educate kids about the choice they're making and hope they make the right choice. But that doesn't mean that we should allow it within the school. So I think we do need to come down hard on kids who want to try that in our environment because it's not acceptable here. This is not a place for you to do those types of things.
Nick, what do you think about that?
What I noticed from my 4 years of high school, and especially my last 2 years, was that there are these new types of vapes that are like pod devices, which are the Juuls and the Pulses and the Fixes, etc. Those are extremely easy to conceal in any public place. That's, I think, the main reason back then is that cigarettes, it's very easy to catch someone. You can't just like light a cigarette in the hallways or something, but you can you can literally hide them in your palm of your hand. Like they're that small. And that was the main reason why a lot of like younger kids have been buying them, is because you can't just pull out a vape, like a vape's like this big, and just start using them, or use a cigarette because the smell, everything about it. But these smaller devices, they're easy to conceal, and you can just like inhale it and nothing will come out. So that's why kids would do that more, even if they're going to get in trouble because they don't think they will.
All right, that's a good note to end on. Thank you for watching Knights of the Round Table. We'll see you next week.